Folks, there is nobody left to blame. I'll get into that and then the latest home prices and insights for the city of Toronto for week ending April 23rd, 2025. About 2 years ago, I sold a property that was a complete gut. The whole home, top to bottom, needed to be renovated. And the person who bought it, I wasn't representing them, I was working for the seller. The person who bought it, that's what they did. They bought it and completely gutted the home and renovated it and called me after their renovation to talk about potentially putting their home on the market for sale. This was their business. They bought homes, they renovated and sold them. So he called me. I'm at the home walking through, and it was stunning. He did a phenomenal job, not just inside, but outside also. The whole home, basement, main floor, second floor, everything. Everything was done new. And so we're talking about a sale price now. And I told him the price I believed. I showed him all my analysis and said, I told him, this is the price most likely your home's going to sell for right now. And beside, he's flipping through his spreadsheet and his notes, and he's saying, Santo, I can't sell it at that price. When I take into account everything, purchase price, expenses, renovation costs, financing, everything, just to break even, I need to be $100,000 more than that. And that doesn't include any profit whatsoever for my time and effort all through all this. And I said, I understand your situation and what you're saying, but my price is based solely on what do I feel a buyer in this market, in this neighborhood would pay for your home. That's the market. It's not based on your spreadsheet. It's based on what's happening right now. And so that's why I feel this is the price that makes sense. And we went back and forth a little bit, and we mutually agreed that I wasn't going to be the one. I didn't want to put the home on the market at a price where I thought it was just going to sit over and for a length of time. And so the home did go on the market pretty soon after that with a different realtor, and it sat for a while, and there were price reductions, and eventually it sold. It was a beautiful home. Lots of buyers would find this home very attractive. Eventually it did sell, and it sold at a price that was probably around a $200,000 loss. The reason when I was with him was a $100,000. Well, over that time the home was on the market, it was for several months, the market was continually changing. It was becoming softer. And so he ended up realizing about a $200,000 loss with no profit at all. And it was strictly a loss. Fast forward to very recently, I've listed another property in that neighborhood, and he called me. It's not like we're enemies or anything. We were, still friends. We had a professional relationship. He called me and we were chatting about the market and, how things have changed and how things are different today than when he used to just, it was fairly easy for him to make a profit in his business. And he started talking about that one house. And he started with, he bought it too high. And remember, I was the listing agent. So he's telling me he bought it too high, but I'm representing the seller. But he bought it too high. And then the conversation changed to, and the general manager he had set up, the general contractor to deal, and that was overseeing a lot of the rentals, made a mistake with a bunch of the materials that he purchased, made a mistake with some of the contractors they hired. And then he switched to the financing, this whole operation. The mortgage broker he had involved, the financing was not ideal. It was costing him way more than it normally would have in the past. Basically, he was blaming everybody, blaming me, blaming everyone that came in contact with that project, except the one person that had to okay everything and signed his name to everything, which was him, not once did he say, I screwed up. I made mistakes along the way. I never saw it coming. Or just, I did what I did before and it worked out, but it didn't work out this time. And isn't that kind of how a business is run, though? You make profits, but the potential to not make profits are there. And most businesses have experienced periods of not making profits as well as periods of making profits. And he was running a business there. He's the one who negotiated, or him and his realtor negotiated with me and the seller to sell. He's the one that we accepted their offer, actually, when I think about it. But it was nobody else's fault. Sorry, it was everybody else's fault except his. And I hear that so many times today. Now, I'm talking about a business here, and this was his business. He would buy and renovate and sell and make a profit. And it worked out for many years for him that way, and he's done well, but he can't do that anymore. And on that home, he lost a lot of money. It's not just people, though, involved with business. There's people that have bought their principal residence, that they're living in the home, that are complaining to me about situations that they're in, and it's somebody else's fault. There's people that have bought and have said they got taken advantage by their mortgage broker or got taken advantage because of their realtor, and that's why they're in the financial crisis that they are today. They can't afford their home and they need to sell, for example. I'm not naive. I know there are people out there in these professions that will take advantage of the public. I know that. But I also know many of these situations, it's the person who's affected the most, which is the actual homeowner. They walked right into this and actually encouraged this. I know of homeowners that need to sell today that have called me, I can't afford it, and they're blaming their mortgage broker. But when they purchased a home way above what they could comfortably afford, and they encouraged the mortgage broker, who happily obliged, or they encouraged the realtor, who happily obliged, to buy something more expensive. But in their mind, they thought they were going to make a profit anyways. Prices are going to go up next year, the year after. Prices are only going to go up. And they didn't. And now it's everybody else's fault. So even though it was their principal residence, the background mentality was they're going to make money anyways. There's, appreciation is going to be in our favor. And they're the ones who sign the mortgage documents. They're the ones who sign the agreement of purchase and sale. They're the ones who saw what the most recent sale was in that neighborhood, and they were prepared to spend $100,000 more to buy that house that they thought was going to be worth $100,000 more the year later. And it wasn't. It's $100,000 less. They're the ones who signed the documents. They're the ones that made the commitment. Yet none of this, for some reason, is their fault. They take no responsibility. Eventually, after these people stop blaming everybody, they'll realize that nobody else is on the hook for this except them. They're the ones that, for sure, had lots to gain if things worked out the way they thought it was going to work out. But there's two sides of that coin, and things are not working out the way they thought. Well, they still have themselves to blame. They're just choosing not to. And I see this often. I see it all the time. There's people that purchased during peak time when prices were the highest. We've helped people buy during those periods. They're good today because they didn't buy with the mentality of prices are going to be so much higher next year. They bought with the mentality of, I need a place to live. This is where prices are now. They bought well within their means. and they're good. They're making their mortgage payments, and they're not looking at it like, I need to make money on my home, otherwise I'm in trouble. They're not looking at their home as an ATM machine. You know, these people that have taken money out of their home and bought pre-construction, bought 1, 2, 3 with the attitude of making profit. For many years, it worked out. And when it didn't, and it's not working out now, and many people have really, really experienced some financial hardships because of this whole pre-construction and selling it before closing and that whole scenario, which I'm not going to get into right now, they're blaming everybody else. They're blaming the builder. They're blaming their realtor who walked them into the sales center. They're blaming the salesperson that they spoke with who worked for the builder. They're blaming everybody except themselves who made that decision. And yeah, there were people that made lots of profit in it. But when you look at it like a business, you got to look at the whole scenario. And there's times where you don't make any money at it. And that's just the thing. When they made money at it, they're the first ones to tell you how smart they are. Now that they're not, they're blaming everybody else. They just are not saying we screwed up. And I'm saying, look, we're big boys and girls here. Take some responsibility, or all responsibility. But, you know, eventually you got to stop blaming everybody for decisions you've made. If you think this video can help somebody you know, please pass it along. If you get value from what we're talking about, subscribe. If you want to speak with me about your real estate situation, selling, buying, it's really simple. Below this video, in the description, there's a link to my calendar. Click on that, book a time that's convenient for you, and we'll talk about whatever's on your mind. You can also go directly to TSRE. That'll take you directly to my calendar. Now, let's get into the numbers. Folks, tonight, Game 5, Go Leafs Go. This show is about City of Toronto, freehold market. Before we get into that, I want to show you where we're at with power of sales. The orange, that's this year, power of sales. I got them broken down by month. The blue, that's a year ago. These are listed power of sales, not just for the City of Toronto, for the whole GTA, for all home types. I'm basically just capturing every property that's listed under power of sale for all the GTA. When we compare this year, January, February, and March, to the same period a year ago, power of sales are up 78%. That's a lot. And when you think about comparing to a year ago, 2024, well, 2024 power sales were up versus 2023. So power sales have been trending up for a while now. We're going to be focused on this show. Detached semis and towns. These are average sold prices. I do have average prices for condos here, just as a comparison. Here we go. For week ending April 23rd. Now keep in mind, that week ending, in the middle of that, we had our Easter break in the middle. Now I'm only saying it because usually, often, when there's any kind of long weekend or holiday break, sales tend to drop. Well, for week ending April 23rd, 145 detached properties were sold. 31 of those were at $2 million or more. Sales a little bit lower than the previous week. Prior to that, look, they weren't increasing every single week, but overall trending up. This week they're down. We'll see which way we go over the next few weeks. But this was the Easter weekend. That helps to explain why we have fewer sales versus the previous week. Average sold price is $1,508,000. That is way down. Average sold price has been coming down for a couple weeks now. Prior to that, average price was trending up. But the last few weeks, kind of going the other way. So we need to keep an eye on that also. If you're looking for a breakdown, well, the overall average sold price is $1,508,000. 3 bedrooms sold for 1,361,000. 4 bedrooms sold for 1.986 million, close to 2 million for 4 bedrooms. That's the average price. The difference between a 3-bedroom and a 4-bedroom detached house, when we're strictly looking at average sold prices, $625,000. There's a big difference in buying a 3-bedroom versus a 4-bedroom house. Compared to last year, 1,508, it's 14% lower than where we were this time a year ago. The median price of 1,285 is 6% lower. The dotted line, that's a 4-week moving average, both for average price and median price. For a while, prices were slightly trending upwards. The last few weeks, they're kind of coming, last few weeks, they're going the other way right now. 145 were sold, 32% sold at list price or more. Listings, we have far more listings this year than a year ago. Active listings trending upwards. Months of inventory, 3.7 for detached properties in the city of Toronto. 3.7 seems a little bit on the higher side than what we've seen the last few weeks, but higher by 0.1, 0.2, not by a lot. So 3.7 is kind of normal, what we've seen since the beginning of March, say. Here's the city broken down into 9 different sections. And I want to focus on Scarborough here. Scarborough had 50 sales. That's 35% of all of Toronto sales. Scarborough is a big producer if we're looking at each section as a producer, as a volume of activity. Scarborough, 35% of all sales, and months of inventory in Scarborough is 2.6. It's one of the more active markets across the GTA, where all of Toronto is sitting at 3.7. But you look at some other areas, like Etobicoke, for example, is at 5.7 months of inventory. Weston Yorkdale is at 3. Midtown, 6 months of inventory. Uptown, Willowdale, Bayview Village, 7.5 months of inventory. But then you got Scarborough, 2.6. East York, Riverdale, 2 months of inventory. Some areas are really hot, lots of activity. Most of the properties being listed are listed with an offer date pricing strategy. They're very competitive. Here's semis for the city of Toronto. For week ending April 23rd, 31 semi-detached sold. 7 of those were at $1.5 million or more. Average price has come down to $1,237,000. Similar to detached, average prices were trending up, but we're kind of seeing a dip going the other way right now. And sales are lower compared to what we've seen the last few weeks. Easter weekend. Average sold price is 1% lower year over year. The median price is 4% higher. Median price is 1.2 million. Months of inventory, because sales dropped so much, shot up to 3.6 months of inventory. But the previous weeks, extremely low, 1.5, 1.8, extremely low. Still, at 3.6 months of inventory, more than half, 58% of the semis that sold at list price or more. Townhomes, these are freehold town properties. It just seems sales are always low with this property type. 8 sold, 3 of those were at $1.5 million or more. Average sold price is $1,327,000. 1,327 is 12% higher year over year. The median price is 13% higher. Months of inventory, way up there at 6.4, but we were hovering around 3 just the prior weeks before that. Here's a quick summary. Months of inventory, 3.7, 3.6, 6.4. Condos, 11.2, but we're not talking about condos in this show. That's tomorrow's show. Overall, in most cases, you're going to experience a balanced market. Some markets, some price points, some neighborhoods, you've seen, they're going to be a bit aggressive. Thanks for watching. Have an awesome day. Game 5, Go Leafs Go.